In a far future city of shining towers and silent skies, humans live under the rule of the alien lords. They are powerful, tall, and mysterious, controlling trade, law, and even life itself. Among the millions who bow to their will, there is one small human family trying to survive. Lyra, a young woman with dark eyes and quiet strength, works every day repairing old machines in the lower district. Her father, once a respected engineer, now lies sick and weak, coughing endlessly in their small metal home. The air smells of dust and oil, and every morning, Lyra wakes up thinking of one thing: how to pay the debts her father owes. The debt is not small. It is owed to Kale, one of the most feared alien lords in the city. He is known for his power, his strange calmness, and his glowing blue eyes that never show mercy. Rumors say he is part human. Others say he has no heart at all. One cold evening, as red light from the alien ships fills the sky, a group of Kale's guards come to their door. Their armor hums softly, their voices metallic. They tell Lyra that her father's time has ended, and if she cannot pay, they will take him away to the labor mines. Lyra falls to her knees, begging them for mercy. Her father tries to stand, but his body shakes like an old machine. Tears fill Lyra's eyes as the guards deliver the final message. Kyle will speak to her himself tomorrow. Then they leave, and silence fills the small home. That night, Lyra cannot sleep. Her father lies beside her, breathing weakly. He whispers, "Lyra, do not go to him, do not give him what he wants." But she knows she must, because if she does not, her father will die. She holds his hand, cold and trembling, and says softly, "I will fix this, father, I promise." The next morning, Lyra walks to Kale's palace. The city above is bright and filled with alien ships, but the lower streets are empty and gray. She walks for hours until she reaches the high gates. Guarded by two tall alien soldiers, they scan her with strange light and lead her inside. Everything feels too quiet, too clean, too powerful. The walls glow with blue symbols she cannot read. The air smells like metal and flowers at the same time. Kale waits for her in a large room made of glass and light. He stands tall, dressed in dark armor that seems to move like it's alive. His eyes are not like other aliens, and they shine softly, almost human. He looks at her for a long moment before speaking. His voice is calm but cold. "You are Lyra, daughter of Aaron?" She nods, afraid to look up. "You know your father's debt," he says. "You cannot pay it with money, but there is another way." Lyra's heart stops for a second. She whispers, "Another way?" Kyle steps closer, his eyes steady. "You will become my wife," he says simply. "In return, your father will live, his debt will be erased." For a moment, Lyra cannot breathe, her voice shakes. "Why me?" Kale looks away, his face unreadable. "Because you remind me of something I lost," he says quietly. Then he turns back to her. "You have one day to decide." He walks away, leaving her standing alone in that cold, beautiful room. Lyra walks out of the palace with her heart heavy. The sky outside feels darker than before. She returns home, her father asleep, his face pale. She sits beside him and whispers everything Kale said. When he wakes and hears it, he tries to rise in anger. "No, Lyra, I will not let you throw your life away." But she takes his hand and cries, "I can't lose you, father. I can't." He looks at her, eyes filled with pain and love. "You don't understand him, child," he says. "These lords are not what they seem. They don't love, they only take." Lyra stays quiet, staring at the flickering light of their broken lamp. Outside, thunder rolls across the metal sky. She knows what she must do, even if it breaks her heart. The next morning, Lyra stands once again before Kale's palace. Her clothes are simple, her hands shaking, but her eyes strong. The guards let her through without a word. Kyle waits for her at the same place. His expression calm, Lyra takes a deep breath and says, "I accept your offer." Kale nods slowly. "Then your father's life is yours to protect." A strange silence fills the room. Kale turns to the guards and says softly, "Prepare the ceremony." As the doors close behind her, Lyra feels her heart breaking and her destiny changing. She does not know that this decision, made from love and pain, will uncover secrets that could change not only her life, but the fate of two worlds. The ceremony took place in silence, no music, no flowers, only the strange hum of alien energy filling the air. Lyra stood beside Kale in front of a silver altar, her heart beating fast. The alien priest spoke in a language she did not understand, glowing symbols floating in the air like ghosts. When it ended, Kale placed a small metallic ring on her finger, cold as ice. He said nothing, only gave her a short nod, and walked away, leaving her surrounded by shadows. That was how her new life began. The marriage that was meant to save her father now felt like a cage made of light. Kale's palace was huge, shining with glass walls and golden floors, but to Lyra it felt empty. Every corridor echoed her footsteps. Every door she passed was locked or guarded. The alien servants bowed to her but never spoke. Their glowing eyes followed her wherever she went. It was a world of silence. And Kale, her husband, was a mystery she could not read. At night she would see him standing on the balcony, looking at the stars. Sometimes the blue glow of the alien sky reflected on his armor, making him look like a statue. He rarely ate, rarely slept, and never smiled when she spoke to him. He answered with short words, calm but distant. It was as if he had built walls inside himself that no one could ever cross. Still, Lyra could not help but wonder, who was he when he was alone? Was there any piece of kindness behind those cold blue eyes? Days turned into weeks. Lyra tried to explore the palace, searching for something familiar. But the more she walked, the stranger everything became. One evening, she found a hallway she hadn't seen before. At the end was a tall door made of dark glass, glowing faintly with blue lines. When she reached out to touch it, the surface pulsed under her hand. Before she could push it open, a voice echoed behind her. "Do not go there," Kale said. Lyra turned quickly, her heart racing. He stood there in silence, his eyes colder than ever. "That part of the palace is forbidden," he said. "For your safety," she frowned. "What's behind that door?" Kale stared at her for a long moment, then said softly, "Nothing you should see." He turned and walked away again, leaving her with more questions than answers. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She lay awake thinking about that forbidden door and Kale's strange warning. The sound of the night wind outside carried faint whispers. Or maybe it was just her imagination. She thought about her father and wondered if he was safe. Kale had promised he would be protected. But could she really trust him? The next morning, she saw something unusual. Kale was speaking to one of his alien commanders in a low voice. But when Lyra passed by, the commander looked at her with surprise, almost fear. Kale noticed and dismissed him immediately. When Lyra asked what that was about, Kale said nothing. His silence was heavy, and Lyra could feel tension in the air. Something was happening that he didn't want her to know. Later that evening, she walked past a mirror made of crystal. For a moment, she thought she saw Kale's reflection, but it wasn't quite him. In the mirror, his face seemed different, softer, almost human. She blinked and it was gone. Her breath caught in her throat. Was her mind playing tricks, or was there something more? That night during dinner, Lyra finally spoke. "You keep secrets from me," she said quietly. Kale looked up from his untouched plate. "Secrets protect people," he said, "including you." "But how can I trust you if I don't know who you are?" she replied. Kale's eyes flashed for a moment, a strange light. Like pain or anger, he stood up slowly and said, "Trust is earned, not demanded." Then he walked out, leaving her alone in the dim light of the dining hall. After that, Lyra started watching him every night. He disappeared from his chambers and went toward the same dark hallway. The one with the forbidden door. She followed him once, moving quietly through the shadows. Through a small gap in the door, she saw him kneel before a glowing sphere. The sphere showed images: humans, soldiers, planets, war. Kale touched the light as if it hurt him, whispering words she couldn't hear. Her breath caught. There was sadness in his voice. Deep human sadness. She stepped back, her heart pounding. Maybe Kale wasn't what he seemed. Maybe he was hiding more than just secrets. The next morning, Kale acted as if nothing had happened. But his eyes looked different. Tired, conflicted, almost haunted. Lyra knew something inside him was breaking, and she didn't know why. That night, as the alien city glowed outside their window, Lyra whispered to herself, "He's not a monster." But deep down, she also felt fear. Because she knew, and the more she learned about Kale, the closer she came to uncovering something far bigger, something that could destroy both of them. Days passed, but Lyra could not forget what she saw that night. Kale's secret chamber, the glowing sphere, the sadness in his voice. It all haunted her dreams every time she closed her eyes. She saw his face half in shadow, half in light. Something inside her whispered that the truth behind that door was the key to everything. The palace was silent most of the time. Only the faint hum of alien energy moved through the halls. Kale was often away attending meetings with alien lords, and when he returned, his eyes carried more weight, like someone fighting a war that no one else could see. Lyra watched him quietly, feeling a strange mix of fear and pity. He was her husband by name, but in truth, he felt like a stranger from another world. One evening, a servant left a tray of food outside her room. When Lyra lifted the cover, a small piece of paper slipped out. It had only 3 words written in a language she didn't know, but underneath, someone had written in human script, "Don't trust him." Her hands shook. Who could have left this message? Were there other humans in this palace? Or was it some kind of test? That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind was full of voices, her father's warning, Kale's silence, and the message outside her window. Lightning flashed over the alien city, turning the sky purple. She decided she could not wait any longer. If Kale had built this wall of secrets, she would find a way to break it. When the palace lights dimmed, Lyra slipped out of her room. Her feet made no sound on the glass floor. She moved through the empty corridors, her heartbeat loud in her ears. The forbidden hallway waited for her like a sleeping beast. The dark glass door glowed faintly as if it knew she was coming. She pressed her hand to its surface. This time the door opened on its own. A soft breeze touched her face, warm and full of strange energy. Inside, the room was huge, filled with floating blue light and holographic screens. At the center was the glowing sphere she had seen before. It pulsed slowly like a heart. As she stepped closer, the sphere changed, showing moving images, humans in cages, soldiers being transformed, machines slicing through skin and metal. Lyra gasped and covered her mouth. She saw Kale among them, strapped to a table, screaming as the aliens injected light into his veins. His eyes turned blue in that moment, his body changed, his voice broke. Then the images faded, replaced by Kale kneeling. Surrounded by alien leaders, they called him the human weapon. Lyra fell to her knees, her whole body shaking. Kyle was not just part human, he was once fully human. They had turned him into something else, something powerful but broken. Now she understood his pain, his distance, and his silence. A soft sound came from behind her. She turned quickly. Kyle was standing at the doorway. He looked at her with calm eyes, but she could see the sorrow behind them. "I told you not to come here," he said quietly. Lyra took a step back, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Why hide who you are?" Kale looked away, his voice low and heavy. "Because the truth is dangerous," he said, "for you. And for me." He walked toward the sphere and touched it. The light inside changed again, showing human cities burning, alien ships hovering above. "This war never ended," he said. "Humans think they are free, but they live under control." Lyra's heart ached. "Then why serve them?" she asked. Kale turned, his face full of quiet fire. "Because someone must protect the few who are left," he said. "I became what they wanted so I could destroy them from within." Lyra stared at him in disbelief. He was both her enemy and her protector, the man she feared, and the man who had saved her father. Kale looked at her with tired eyes. "Now you know my truth," he said. "But knowing it puts you in danger." He stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "Promise me you will tell no one," Lyra wanted to promise. But before she could answer, the room's alarm started to ring. Red light filled the chamber and a robotic voice shouted in alien tongue. Kale's expression changed to panic for the first time. "They know," he said sharply. "Run, Lyra, now." The floor trembled, walls shifting. Kale grabbed her hand and pulled her toward a hidden door behind the sphere. They ran through the glowing corridor as energy blasts shook the walls. Lyra's heart pounded for the first time. She saw fear in Kyle's eyes. She didn't know what waited for them outside. But she knew one thing. The secret was no longer hidden, and their lives would never be the same again. The alarms echoed through the halls like thunder. Red lights flashed across the shining walls, turning everything into fire and shadow. Kale ran through the secret passage with Lyra's hand in his grip strong but trembling. Behind them, the sound of alien soldiers' boots grew louder. The palace that once felt silent now roared with chaos. They rushed into a dark tunnel that led deep underground. Metal doors slammed shut behind them as Kale pressed his palm to the wall. The symbols on the metal glowed and sealed the passage. Cutting off the sound of pursuit, Lyra leaned against the wall. Breathing fast, her heart racing, Kale's armor flickered, parts of it cracking with sparks. For the first time, he looked like he might break. Lyra stared at him. her fear mixing with something new, pity. He was not the monster she once believed. His eyes were filled with pain. "Not cruelty, Kyle," she whispered. "Who are they? Why are they after you?" Kyle looked up slowly, his voice low and steady. "They are the Council's hunters," he said. "They have discovered that I'm not fully one of them." Lyra took a small step closer, her voice trembling. "So they know you're human." Kale nodded, his jaw tight. "They call me a traitor now," he said. "I have spent years pretending to serve them, to protect humans from their plans. But now they will destroy me and anyone who stands beside me." He looked at her, his blue eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You should have stayed away from me, Lyra." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "If I hadn't come here, I would never have known who you really are." Kale turned away, his hand pressed against the wall. For a moment, the strong alien lord looked like a lost human, haunted by everything he had become. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "They made me into a weapon, but I never stopped being human inside." Lyra stepped closer, her hand reaching for his shoulder. When she touched him, the armor under her fingers was cold and hard, but beneath it she felt warmth. He didn't move, but his breathing slowed. That single touch felt like light breaking through darkness. For years he had hidden behind walls of metal and lies, but in that quiet moment something inside him began to melt. Kale finally turned toward her, his face softer than before. "I'm sorry, Lyra," he said quietly. "I never meant for you to get caught in this war." Lyra looked into his eyes and said, "You saved my father, Kale, and now you saved me. That's not the act of a monster." He looked surprised, as if no one had spoken to him with kindness in years. For a second, a faint smile touched his lips. Small, but real. Suddenly the walls around them shook again. A loud crash echoed through the tunnel. Kale's head snapped up. "They've breached the lower gate." He pulled a small device from his belt, pressing it against the wall. A blue map appeared, showing escape paths. "There's a maintenance route through the old city tunnels," he said. "But it's long and dangerous." He turned to her. "Stay behind me. And don't stop." They ran through narrow passages filled with mist and old machinery. The air was hot and smelled like rust. Lyra could hear alien drones above them, searching, scanning, hunting. At one point, a drone spotted them, and Kale pushed her behind a pillar. Energy blasts hit the wall beside them. Glowing blue, Kyle turned, raised his hand, and fired a strange pulse from his armor. The drone exploded in light, pieces scattering across the ground. Lyra stared in shock. "How did you do that?" Kyle's breathing was heavy, his voice low. "Part of the experiment they did to me," he said. "They gave me power I never wanted." He looked at his own hands, glowing faintly with blue veins. "Every time I use it, I lose a little more of what makes me human." Lyra's heart ached. She stepped closer and said softly, "Then stop fighting alone." They reached an old transport chamber at the end of the tunnel. It was dark, filled with dust and broken screens. Kale activated it with his energy, and the machines roared to life. The air shimmered as the gate began to open, revealing the city's underworld. Before stepping through, Kale looked at Lyra and said, "If we survive this, you must decide whether to stay or go. I won't force you again." Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of emotion. "You already did, Kyle," she said softly. "But this time I choose to stay." He looked at her silently for a long moment, and something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile but real. As they stepped into the dark streets below, the storm above them raged on. But inside, Lyra felt a strange warmth. For the first time, she saw Kale not as her captor, but as a broken man trying to make things right. He was a weapon born from pain, but still carrying a human heart. And in that one quiet moment, when he turned to make sure she was safe, Lyra realized something she had never expected. The cold marriage born from duty was slowly turning into something else, something human, something real. The city below was silent and dark. Neon lights flickered weakly above the mist, painting the streets in shades of blue and violet. Lyra followed Kyle through the hidden tunnels that ran under the alien capital. Her mind was spinning with everything she had seen: the laboratory, the memories, the experiments. She had wanted answers, but now she wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth. Kale walked ahead without speaking, his steps steady but heavy. The air around him felt cold, almost sorrowful. He looked less like a powerful lord and more like a man carrying the weight of two worlds. Finally, Lyra broke the silence, her voice trembling. Kale, you said they turned you into a weapon, but why? Why would they do that to a human? Kale stopped walking. The light from a flickering neon sign reflected in his eyes. They wanted to control humanity, he said quietly. To make us loyal, to make us obey. He turned toward her, his face pale in the soft glow. They took the strongest soldiers, scientists, anyone who could lead and change them, made them half like them, half machine. He touched the side of his neck where faint blue veins glowed under his skin. I was one of them, part of their experiment called Project Dominion. Lyra listened. Her heart twisting, he continued, his voice low and steady. I was a soldier once on the last human colony. We fought the alien invasion for years, but when they captured us, they didn't kill us, they studied us. Rebuilt us, made us tools, they erased our memories. Replaced them with obedience, but something in me refused to break. He looked down, his hand curling into a fist. I remembered the screams of my people, the faces of those I couldn't save even when they changed my body. My mind fought back, I pretended to serve them. But I was waiting for a chance to fight again. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes wide. And that's why you became a lord, she whispered. Kale nodded slowly. Yes, they thought I was loyal, so they gave me power. From here I could protect small human districts, block their cruel orders, and hide the truth from their council. But every day it becomes harder to hide. They suspect more, and now because of you, they know. Lyra felt guilt tighten in her chest. I'm sorry, she said softly. I never wanted to bring you danger. Kale shook his head gently. No, Lyra. You brought me something I forgot existed. Trust. His words were calm, but his eyes were full of emotion. He looked away quickly, as if afraid of what she might see. They reached an old underground chamber. Filled with broken machines and human symbols, it looked like an abandoned shelter. Kale pressed his hand to a wall and a hidden door slid open. Inside were a few humans, tired, dirty, but alive. When they saw Kyle, they bowed, not in fear but in respect. Commander, one of them said. We thought you were dead. Lyra looked at him in surprise. Commander? She whispered. Kyle sighed. Before all of this, I led them. The humans looked at Lyra with confusion. Kale spoke quickly. She's with me. She's safe. Then he turned to the group and said, The council knows about me. They will come for us soon. The leader of the survivors, an older man, nodded grimly. Then it's time to move the resistance, Kale agreed, but his voice grew softer. There's something else I must do first. His eyes shifted to Lyra. When they were alone, Lyra finally asked, What will happen to you if they catch you? Kale smiled faintly, but there was sadness in it. They'll erase what's left of my human side, he said, and use my body as a weapon again. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Then you can't stay here, you have to run. Kale shook his head. Running won't save anyone, I have to end this. I have to finish what they started. He reached into his armor and pulled out a small glowing crystal. It pulsed softly, almost alive. This holds the control codes for the alien network, he said. If I destroy it, they lose control of half their machines. But it's tied to me. If I do it, it will kill me too. Lyra stared at him. Frozen, you can't, she whispered. There must be another way. Kale's voice was calm, almost peaceful. There's always another way, but sometimes sacrifice is the only one that matters. He placed the crystal in her hand, his touch gentle. If I fall, promise me you'll give this to the resistance. Lyra held the crystal tightly, her eyes wet. I don't want to lose you, Kyle, she said softly. He looked at her for a long moment. Once, I thought I had no heart left, he said, but now I know I was wrong. He turned to leave, but she caught his hand. Don't face them alone, she whispered. He looked back at her and said, Then stay close. My human heart. Outside, the storm raged again. The alien ships moved in the distance like shadows of war. Lyra and Kale stood side by side, the light of the crystal glowing between them. The truth was out now, the war was coming. But in the middle of that darkness, for the first time they didn't feel alone. The night was heavy with silence. Far above the ruined city, alien ships floated like silent ghosts, their lights flashing across the black clouds. Inside the hidden base, Lyra stood by a broken window, watching the storm twist the sky. Kyle stood behind her, his armor dimmed, his face pale under the flickering light. Everything between them had changed. No more secrets. No more lies, only truth and fear. The resistance had started moving, preparing for an attack that could decide everything. They had only a few hours before the Alien Council traced Kale's signal to their location. The humans packed weapons, machines, and small devices that glowed faintly blue. Human tech rebuilt from alien scraps. But none of it felt enough, against ships that could burn cities. They were just sparks in the dark. Lyra turned to Kale, her voice soft. "You can't face them alone," she said. "You'll die." Kyle didn't answer. He was looking at the glowing crystal in his hand, the control core that held the alien network, the one thing that could stop them, and the one thing that could kill him. Finally he spoke, his tone calm but filled with quiet pain. "If I don't do this, billions will remain slaves forever, their minds controlled by the Council's machines." Lyra shook her head, her voice breaking. "But there has to be another way we can escape." "Start again," Kale looked at her, and for a moment there was warmth in his eyes. "I used to dream about escape," he said, "until I learned that running from pain only makes it grow." He stepped closer, placing the crystal in her hands again. "If I fall, destroy this. Don't let them take it." She stared at it, the small glowing stone that held his fate. Her hands trembled. "Why are you always ready to die?" Kale smiled faintly. "Because death stopped scaring me the day I lost everything that made me human." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes shining with tears. "You didn't lose it, Kale," she said softly. "You just buried it so deep that even you forgot it was still there." He didn't reply, but something inside him shifted for the first time. He looked unsure, not as a soldier, but as a man before either could speak again. Alarms blared through the base, the walls shook, dust falling from the ceiling. "They found us," someone shouted. "The ships are above us." Kale's armor came to life, blue light spreading across it like fire. He turned to Lyra, his voice sharp now, full of command. "Stay with the others. Get to the evacuation tunnel." Lyra grabbed his arm. "I'm not leaving you." He looked at her, his eyes full of something between love and sorrow. "You already saved me, Lyra, by seeing me as something more than a weapon. That's enough." The floor cracked as an explosion tore through the outer wall. Alien soldiers flooded the entrance, their armor glowing red, their weapons humming with energy. Kale stepped forward, energy pulsing through his hands. When he raised his arm, light exploded from his palm, striking the first line of enemies. The blast shook the air, sending shockwaves through the chamber. Lyra shielded her eyes, but even through the chaos, she couldn't look away. He wasn't just fighting, he was burning. His human side and alien side colliding like lightning and flame. The resistance fought beside him, but they were falling fast. Kyle turned back and shouted, "Get her out of here!" Two soldiers grabbed Lyra's arms, pulling her toward the tunnels. She screamed his name, Kale, but he didn't turn. He was surrounded now, his blue glow shining like a dying star in the tunnel. Lyra struggled free and looked back one last time. Kyle stood in the ruins of the hall, raising the crystal high. His voice echoed through the storm. "For every human they took, for every life they broke, I end this now." He crushed the crystal in his hand, and the light burst out like a sun. The ground trembled, machines screamed, and the alien network shattered in a wave of light that spread across the sky. Lyra fell to her knees as the air filled with blinding energy. When the light faded, the city above was silent, the alien ships falling from the clouds like dying stars. The battle was over. The resistance had won, but the cost was heavy. She ran back through the broken corridors. Calling his name, the air was filled with smoke and dust. Then she saw him, lying among the ruins. His armor cracked, his eyes dim. Lyra fell beside him, tears spilling down her face. "Kale, please, stay with me," she whispered. He looked at her weakly, his voice fading. "You kept your promise, Lyra. You gave me back my heart." His hand brushed her cheek, and then slowly fell. Lyra cried, her voice echoing through the silent halls. Outside, the dawn began to rise, soft golden light breaking through the storm. The world was changing, free at last, but full of loss. Lyra looked at the sky and whispered, "You saved us, Kale, and I will tell them who you truly were." The light touched her face, warm and alive, and for a moment she felt him there, not gone, but everywhere, in the wind, in the rising sun. In the quiet beating of her heart, he was gone. But his choice had changed everything. The first rays of dawn broke through the storm clouds. The alien city, once filled with the hum of machines and cold blue lights, now lay in silence. Ships that had once ruled the skies hung motionless, their engines dead. The control towers that had glowed through the night were now dark and lifeless. The war was over, but the world was changed forever. Lyra stood on the balcony of the broken palace, her clothes torn, her hands still marked with dust and blood. The wind carried the smell of metal and smoke, but also something new, peace below her. Humans were stepping out from hiding places, blinking in the new light like children seeing the world for the first time. For years they had lived under alien rule, afraid to speak, afraid to dream. Now, for the first time, the city belonged to them again. Lyra held a small metal shard in her hand, a piece of Kale's broken armor. It still glowed faintly, warm against her skin. She closed her eyes and whispered, "You did it, Kale." But the words broke inside her, because the silence that followed reminded her that he was gone. He had given everything, even his life, so that others could be free. The resistance gathered in what remained of the Great Hall. Humans from every district, soldiers, engineers, and children, all standing together. Lyra walked among them, and wherever she went, people bowed their heads in respect. They all knew who Kale was now. Not a monster, not an alien lord, but a human who fought from within. His secret had spread through whispers, through tears, through stories told around flickering lights. One of the soldiers approached her, his face tired but hopeful. "What now, Lyra?" he asked. "The world is free, but we are broken." Lyra looked at him and said softly, "Then we rebuild, we start again as humans. Together." Her voice carried through the hall, calm and strong. "For too long we believed we were weak. But Kale showed us what it means to fight, not with hate, but with hope." She climbed the broken steps of the hall, her voice growing louder. "They called us slaves, tools and lesser beings, but we proved them wrong. Kale proved them wrong. Because inside him, inside all of us, there is something no machine can control, something no alien can destroy, the human within." The crowd fell silent, and then one by one they raised their hands to the sky. It was not a cheer of victory, but a promise, a vow to honor the one who gave them back their future. As days passed, the world began to change. The machines that once served the council were repurposed by human hands. The skies, once guarded by alien ships, were now watched by human patrols flying salvaged crafts. The city that had been cold and silver slowly turned warm and alive. Children played in the streets again, and old songs once banned were sung under the open sky. Lyra became a symbol not of power but of remembrance every morning. She visited the same spot, the place where Kale had fallen. There she built a small monument, made from the pieces of his shattered armor. At its center, she placed the crystal core that had once held the alien network. Now dark and silent above it, she carved the words he once spoke to her. "The heart of humanity beats even in darkness." People came from far and wide to see it. They left flowers, lights, and notes filled with gratitude. Some called it the shrine of the lost soldier, others the beacon of hope. But to Lyra, it was simply Kale's resting place. She would sit there for hours, talking softly as if he could still hear her, telling him about the new schools being built, the gardens growing again, and the laughter returning to the streets. One night, as she sat by the monument, a soft wind swept through the ruins. The shards of metal around her began to hum faintly. Lyra looked up, startled, and for a brief moment, she saw a faint blue light flicker across the armor. It was gentle, almost like a heartbeat. She smiled through her tears and whispered, "You're still here, aren't you?" The stars above shimmered brighter that night. And though she was alone, she didn't feel lonely anymore. Because somewhere in the echoes of the wind, she could almost hear his voice. "You kept your promise, Lyra." Humanity lives years later. When the history of the war was written, they called it the Reclamation. And among the names of heroes and leaders, one story stood above all, the tale of a man who became a machine to save mankind, and a woman who reminded him what it meant to be human. Lyra stood before the monument one last time, older now but still strong. She placed her hand on the stone and said softly, "The stars remember you, Kale, and so will we." As she turned to leave, the dawn light broke once more over the city. Warm, golden, and alive, the world had moved on. But the legend of the human within, the one who dared to love, to fight, and to believe, would live forever. carried by every heartbeat under the sun.